Hello, Black women across the globe. Happy holidays, and welcome to today's video where I'm expanding a little bit more on why I no longer watch Tyler Perry movies, and specifically the connection between Tyler Perry films, white supremacy, and patriarchy. Big shocker, right? If you watched my earlier post and watched a couple of the recent videos I've put in, I do give some hints as to why I no longer and specifically watch Tyler Perry movies and a number of other movies that are in the same genre. Now, if you are not a Black woman, you might want to sit this one out and remember to subscribe, hit the notification button, and share this video with anyone else. So whether you agree, disagree, like, what have you, the algorithm does not discriminate, and neither do I. So back to what I was discussing earlier when I talked about Tyler Perry films and white supremacy as well as patriarchy. Now, for those of you who need a little bit of a refresher course, I did make sure that I had dictionary definitions, because you know there are always the haters out there and the naysayers who love them some patriarchy, who love them some Tyler Perry movies. And of course, given the state of the globe today, there are so many who are in love with white supremacy. Big shocker. So let's get on to the definition, the dictionary definition, according to Oxford Dictionary, of patriarchy. Patriarchy, I'm reading from my notes here because I want it to be a very specific and very concise. Patriarchy, a system of social organization where men dominate both the public and private spheres. It is a society in which either the oldest male is the leader of the family, or a society controlled by men in which they use their power to their own advantage. I hope you're picking up on some of these key terms: dominance, power, advantage. Now let's head on over to white supremacy. White supremacy is the belief that white people constitute a superior race and should therefore dominate, there's that word again, society, typically to the exclusion, another key word, or detriment of other racial and ethnic groups. And let's move on to our final one. I did throw in there, as I did talk about patriarchy, I did give the definition for white supremacy, but I'm going to throw in another one because it's related and connected as well. Capitalism, an economic and political system in which a country's trade and industry are controlled by private owners for profit. Now, I'll need you to understand that there are 4 different types of capitalism that are out there. And not to get out into the weeds, there's one that specifically speaks to the American current condition, which is capitalism, oligarchical capitalism. There's a whole theory out there about that, and I don't want to get all in the weeds. But let's get back to Tyler Perry films and the connection between all of these things. Now, if you're like me, if you're a Gen Xer, and you've grown up in, a Black household, being exposed to Black media, especially as a Black woman, following shows and films and things of that nature, Tyler Perry movies were a thing for us growing up and all of that. And it wasn't until I began my own decolonized self-care journey and unpacking internal misogyny, decentering patriarchy, decentering men, decentering and unpacking and healing from colonial constructs that were embedded in my own culture and community. And this is a thing that Black people are going to have to continue to address. And it's only with the help of, therapy as well, having a clinical mental health provider who is also a Black woman. Healing is not linear. So this is an ongoing process, and I need us to give ourselves grace when it comes to dealing with generational trauma. And we do have some wonderful work out there that's been done by Black researchers in the area of PTSD related to the trauma of enslavement and the effects, the epigenetic effects of these systems on Black bodies and Black people and people of color in the wider sphere of things. Now, let's get back to Tyler Perry, shall we? I grew up watching Tyler Perry movies, Oprah, and all of that. And it's really, really interesting how patriarchy and other systems of oppression, because understand, patriarchy, capitalism, white supremacy, I said the ties that bind, the three ties that bind, patriarchy, white supremacy, all of this, they are the three ties that bind. They are all systems that are oppressive. They are all systems that leverage power and advantage over others. It seeks in some way to marginalize others. Now, you can say what you want, you can argue with your mama. Patriarchy is a small fragment of the totality of human history, yet it has wreaked so much global havoc on this world. And that's not just on the human population, but the ecosystem, the environment. All living things have been impacted in its destructive and negative ways because of patriarchy. You could argue with your mama, but that's what it is. And the insidious and dangerous thing about oppressive systems, they create ways to continuously replicate themselves, to continue to lock themselves in. And so when you as a people, or in our instance as a people, but also women, when we begin to awaken, when we begin to unpack and decenter these systems, understand, and I've said this before, I've said this also on my podcast, the Undomesticated Woman podcast, where when you begin the reclamation process, when you pull back and reclaim your energy, your power, your resources, there will always be a response to that. And it is a universal law. There is an equal and opposite. There will always be an equal and opposite reaction to things. When it comes to systems of oppression, when it comes to subjugation, when it comes to power imbalances, those who benefit from your free labor, from marginalizing you, from taking things from you, taking power, putting you in a position where you're disadvantaged, when that is no longer allowed to happen on your part because you have awakened and you're beginning to reclaim all that you are, the powers that be will always respond with violence. And this is one of the reactions that's playing out globally, is the fact that there is a crisis level of interpersonal violence, violent gender-based violence. There is crisis level of femicide, and this is globally. As a matter of fact, if you've been watching, you haven't been under a rock somewhere, if you've been watching what's going on in South Africa, there's a movement in South Africa that is spreading across the ways. If you follow a number of creators on TikTok, especially advocates for women's health, women's rights, you'll notice that they've changed their profile to purple, or have a purple overlay. That is in solidarity with our sisters in South Africa who are rising up against gender-based violence and femicide in South Africa, which is at epidemic levels. And the World Health Organization has recognized this since the pandemic, of terrible crisis level violence against women. And this is I would argue, in direct response to women awakening and reclaiming their power, their resources, their access to power, by opting out of this system's interconnected system of patriarchy, capitalism, misogyny, white supremacy. They're all interconnected. As Black women, our fight has been even more bloody, if you will, because we intersect these systems of oppression at another level. And so when you look at this, when you consider these things, know that even excuse my phone, recognize that even at the level of, had to pause my video for a little bit there because I had an incoming call, but as I was saying, when it comes to Black women, and we are special in so many ways. We birthed the world. Humanity begun on our homeland. We are the blueprint. And unfortunately, we are also the ones who have the most points of, arguably the most points of intersectionality. And as you hit different communities within that intersectionality, that goes up even more, and the problems we encounter as Black women increase even more. So what does Tyler Perry movies have to do with this? Tyler Perry movies, in my opinion, and a number of women who have deconstructed and done the work will say the same. And this is not just about Tyler Perry movies, actually, but a lot of these movies that are supposedly rom-com-esque movies that push the agenda of these oppressive systems. And that is to reinforce the conditioning that has women asleep right now, where women, oppressive systems have been able to freely extract female labor, devalue female labor and female bodies. And when it comes to Black women, this is particularly dangerous and insidious. And this is why I stopped watching Tyler Perry movies. Tyler Perry movies push the narrative that Black women must struggle, be burned out, constantly prove their worth and their love, and accept less from everything, from everyone. And every time I think about that, it just enrages me. Because first and foremost, whether you're a woman or you are a man, your value is intrinsic. Life, the value of all life on this planet is is intrinsic. Two, we are all connected. How dare you say we need to prove our worth as a living being, that we need to give you power over us? No. Forever no. And I will drag anyone to the pits of hell before I accept that. And before any Black woman accepts that. Because our people have been so traumatized, so dehumanized in this global system of oppression, of being the survivors of the transatlantic slave trade, of our peoples globally on the continent and in the diaspora, still in 2025 being subjected to the same colonial traumas and devaluations and extractions by these systems of oppression. And so when I look at Tyler Perry movies, that is the messaging continues to attempt and success, and it is successful in some instances, because we see instances of Black women and women everywhere, and not just those who are exposed to Tyler Perry films and media, but to others, similar sorts of media where women are conditioned to accept less, where women are conditioned to be second-class citizens, where women are disempowered and encouraged to remain in that state, where they accept the systems of oppression and actually uphold these systems of oppression in the hopes that their proximity to these same systems of oppression will give them some higher level of being within that hierarchy. And if you're a woman of that demographic, I hope this is triggering you, because I am specifically speaking of white women and their historical upholding of white supremacy and all their systems, and patriarchy and other systems of oppression, in order to maintain their position within that quote unquote system of oppression, but within that system of oppression, the hierarchy, their level within that hierarchy. And this is largely why I say, and a lot of other Black women have said, especially in the Black feminist movement, have said that until that demographic of women as a collective deconstruct and decenter and opt out of that system and that need to be upholders, otherwise known as handmaidens of patriarchy and white supremacy, until they opt out of that, we gonna have to leave them over there and continue to do our work as Black women, and then other POC, people of color, women within that demographic, will have to continue to do the difficult work of decentering, unpacking, and healing from these oppressive systems, while at the same time navigating them. And so when films like Tyler Perry, I feel a lot of his films are dangerous. They are entertaining on the surface, but it's only when you are truly awakened and you have started the decentering process that you're able to see the dangerous and harmful messaging that encapsulates a lot of his films. I remember some years ago when I first started removing myself from his movies, I had been doing a lot of internal work, and I had been reading a lot of books by people like Audre Lorde, um, Bell Hooks, and some other prominent authors in the realm of deconstruction, decentering, and internal healing as Black people, and particularly as Black women. And I remember there was one occasion where I was watching his movie, and something happened in the film, and it just took me out, and because it triggered me so badly, and I was like, what the hell? And once you, this is the thing, and this is what I have always said when it comes to becoming an undomesticated woman, and as Ashanti, a creator in the space of Black feminism and Black women in reclaiming themselves, she calls it being an unpunishable woman. Once you get on that process, you can't unsee it. And I think that's the whole, these kind of systems, and those who push and uphold these systems understand. And that's why they make their movies, there is almost like subliminal messages they put in their movies, and they constantly put it in your face to make you accept something that is the antithesis of what you should be accepting, and is in complete opposition to your humanity and womanhood, especially if you're a Black woman. We historically, before colonial contact and before the rise of patriarchy, our women were always unpunishable. And that's why you will hear in a lot of instances and a lot of slogans globally when it comes to marginalized groups reclaiming their power and autonomy and value as humans, you'll say, the world will never be free until all Black women are free, because that is an internal awareness and recognition that, one, we are the first, the blueprint for humanity, but also our power and the power of the world lies in our reclamation of our unpunishable status. We are a group of women that have never been in collaboration or acceptance of patriarchy. We existed outside of patriarchy, and that was one of the jarring things during colonial contact anyway. When colonials, and you know what group I'm talking about, when colonizers came to our sacred lands of our people, of our indigenous lands, the jarring thing was them, even in their documentaries and their little journals, that some of which have been published and are in circulation, they were jarred and shocked and horrified by the autonomy and existence of womanhood in our indigenous spaces. Why? Because we were unpunishable, and we did not live in patriarchy or under patriarchy, and that was something they could not get their heads around. And so they brought their religious dogma, their systems of oppression, and brutalized our people, and so deeply. And those wounds, colonial wounds, religious, and a lot of them are religious in nature, those colonial wounds have yet to be healed as a collective in the motherland, and even in the diaspora. But I would argue and say that in the diaspora, particularly here in the in North America, Black people here are further along in that healing process simply because we did not have a choice. We are people that were taken from our land. So Black Americans, Black people have a unique history in that they are completely disconnected from their original land and historical context. Not culture, but historical context. We've been able to, Black Americans and those in the diaspora have been, to varying degrees, have been able to retain the cultural elements and sacred ways of being that had to be adapted and restructured for living and navigating this part of the world. But again, back to Tyler Perry movies. Tyler Perry movies are, in my estimation, they are simply the cattle prod that was used on the plantation to keep Black folks in check. And those, movies and other movies like them are used to condition and train Black female minds, Black women and girls' minds to accept the status quo of abuse, of marginalization, devaluing, extraction of labor, and all the isms. We're not going out like that in 2025, and my message to you for 2026, Black women, it's time to wake up. It's time to decenter. It's time to heal. It's time to reclaim. And part of that reclamation process means being very, very careful of the media that you consume, because you need to understand and get very strategic in your thinking in terms of what kind of access you are allowing in your space. This is why I speak a lot about gatekeeping our sacred, decolonized ways of being. Our version of self-care is decolonized self-care. It is not conventional self-care, which is a bastardized version and capitalistic version of a hodgepodge of cultural extractions, healing modalities that have been taken out of context from other cultures, stolen and repackaged and being sold and marketed to us. And even in that process, it's still not meant for us, because you see who the messengers of that version of self-care in the health and wellness industry is. Hence why we've had to create our own Black yoga studios, our own healing modalities, and beginning, you see that largely, you hear that being spoken of on a number of platforms, Threads, TikTok, YouTube, where we are more and more, you're seeing Black women like myself say, hey, we need to start gatekeeping our healing modalities so that they are not commodified and then turned against us to inflict harm. Because that's exactly what they're doing. When you have healing practices that are colonized, when you try to access that, that is poison and toxic to you, and it's toxic to your spirit and in your ancestral ways of being. And that's why you see you're still burned out, you're still overwhelmed, you don't feel rested, you don't really feel like that encounter has done anything for you. It's not a safe space. None of these colonial spaces are for us, and you will never be healed and rested in those spaces. If you are the only Black person in some hypothetical yoga studio or whatever, do you really think that's beneficial to you? I'm going to let you answer that. So having said that, I'm going to close out today's video. I have some more videos I'll be releasing in the spirit of Vlogmas. I hopped on late to the Vlogmas train, but as we move in, we have only a couple more days before we move into 2026, and I think it is incumbent upon us as Black women to start that process now so that we are ahead of the game, because 2026 has got more in store for us. Till next time, my name is Tony Barango. I am the self-care maven. I help Black women opt out of burnout, get off the altar of other people's expectations, and become undomesticated. Till next time, bye.